Hi, I'm Winter, and
You.
You.
You. You.
Yo!
You.
You.
I am so utterly disrespected by that. Fuck you.
I didn't even say anything! Around 9 months ago, I took a look at Generation 1 of Pokémon and realized that, while it started the largest media franchise in the entire world, it was pretty much just a broken, glitchy mess with all sorts of balancing issues, terrible sprite work, strange design choices, and honestly, just all around it wasn't that fun of a game. So after a fantastic first impression like that, who wouldn't want to take a look at Generation 2? Pokémon Red and Blue were a major financial success for everyone involved, and Game Freak could not put the potential of this series to waste. Development on a sequel began almost immediately, with the title of the next games being Pokémon Gold and Silver. Pokémon Gold and Silver had a long and storied development process, with one of the game's mascots being designed for a movie that was released years after the development of the game started. The games were going to take advantage of everything the developers had learned while working on Generation 1, while also expanding on everything introduced in Red and Blue. The team felt like this was going to be the last Pokémon game, so they had to make it the best in the series. New types were introduced, Steel and Dark, along with new mechanics and 100 additional Pokémon on top of the original 151 returning. This was looking to be the best game in the series with those additions alone. Let's get an expert opinion. Winter from a few minutes in the future, how do you feel about Pokémon Gold and Silver? These games are pretty much on par with Red and Blue. Gold and Silver finally released in Japan in 1999 and a year later in 2000 over here in the States. They released a commercial success as Red and Blue had, though they weren't quite as successful. Pokemania had started to die down a bit by this point, and there were already snobs who refused to accept these as true Pokemon games. Why did Gen 1ers exist? As with last time, I'll be taking a look at the entirety of Generation 2 this time around, but our main focus is Pokemon Silver, so let's just get started. The game starts almost identically to last time. Professor Oak wants to sit us down and ask us some questions. For the last time, I didn't kill him! He actually only asked for my name this time. His grandson? I doubt he even remembers he has a grandson at this point. These games take place 3 years later, and he'd already forgotten his grandson's name in the first game. Then Mom asked me to set the time, along with whether it is or isn't daylight savings time. I genuinely don't know what this affects in-game other than the shading and when some Pokemon appear in the wild. Professor Elm wants me to go out to Mr. Pokemon's house to get a Pokemon egg. That's like being named Mr. Animal. He lets me choose between 3 Pokemon, and much like in Generation 1, I like all the starter choices here. There's Chikorita, the grass type, Totodile, the water type, and Cyndaquil, the fire type. My personal favorite of the 3 is Chikorita because it's adorable, but I went with Totodile this time around because I genuinely don't think I'd ever used Totodile before. Once I get to Mr. Pokemon's house, I get the egg and meet Professor Oak. He gives me the Pokedex and then leaves. But the second I leave to head back home, Elm calls and says a Pokemon was stolen. We fight a guy who introduces himself as triple question marks and then head back to Elm's lab where we narc on triple question marks. I mean, he did say it was his name. From here, the game is mostly similar to Red and Blue, structurally. We head off to fight the 8 gym leaders, fighting Team Rocket along the way in the worst plot in the Pokemon series. The gym leaders this time around are pretty boring in comparison to the ones in Red and Blue. First is Falkner, who uses flying types, including a Pidgeotto that shouldn't be able to exist. This fight is extremely easy. Next is Bugsy, whose team consists of 2 Pokemon that can't attack, and Scyther, which is pretty easy to take down. Third up, Whitney. This one is infamous for her Miltank, her strongest Pokemon, being able to sweep entire teams if it gets going. It didn't get going. Fourth is Morty, the Ghost-type gym leader, who is easy. I'm beginning to notice a theme here. The next 3 gyms can be fought in any order from here. I started with Price, who uses ice types. He's generally meant to be the 7th gym leader you fight, so his levels were a bit high, but he was still incredibly easy. Next was Chuck, who uses fighting types. I beat him while he had a type advantage. 7th was Jasmine, who uses the new Steel type. I started with Feraligatr, so this was easy. And last but not least is Claire, who uses Dragon type Pokemon. This was slightly more challenging than the first 7 due to Kingdra having a somewhat awkward typing, but it wasn't that much harder. Overall, I think the cast of gym leaders here is weaker in comparison to the ones in Generation 1. Some of them are cool, like Bugsy being an archaeologist or Claire being a dragon tamer, but the vast majority of these gym leaders don't have a clear theme to what they are. On top of that, the pacing of the game is weird too. Defeating the 8 gym leaders, Team Rocket, and the Pokemon League is normally a task that would take your Pokemon up to around level 50 to 60, right? But because of the god-awful pacing in this particular generation, specifically with those 3 gyms you can fight in any order, I still had Pokemon below level 40 by the time I fought the champion. And that just feels wrong. Well, that's partially because defeating the 8 gyms, Team Rocket, and the Pokemon League are actually only half the game this time around.
That's impossible!
No, after you beat the first 8 gyms and the Pokemon League, you get on a boat that takes you to the region from the first game, the Kanto region. There you can fight all the gym leaders from said game except Koga, who's an Elite 4 member now and is thus replaced by his daughter Janine, and Giovanni, who's probably super fucking dead. But he's been replaced by the rival from the first game, which is pretty neat. Elbow? Oh no, he's blue now. My elbow's all grown up now. This is super fucking cool, getting to see all these places and people 3 years after the first generation, and hearing the new music and seeing the new sprites for all the Pokemon. And to make it even cooler, after you defeat Blue and get the 16th badge, you get access to an area called Mount Silver, where you can fight a character named Red, aka the character you played as in Pokemon Red and Blue. And they have by far the strongest team in the game, with Pokemon in their mid-level 70s. However, the Kanto region is paced even more poorly than Johto. The wild Pokemon here are still around level 15 at some points. My Pokemon were all level 40 or more by the time I made it to Kanto. The only way to get experience is to fight the trainers and the gym leaders, and that's really not enough when the entire region is supposed to be building you up to fight Pokemon 30 levels higher than yours at the point when you arrive. Pokemon Gold and Silver did introduce a lot that I feel is really important to the series as a whole, such as the Dark and Steel types, or Wooper and Quagsire. But I don't know, these just didn't feel that much better than the original games. They did end up making a 3rd version again for this generation titled Pokemon Crystal, and while this is probably the definitive version of the Game Boy games, I didn't see any reason to play this after already playing through all of Silver. They just didn't add enough to make it worth the time it would take. So that's the Game Boy games all taken care of. Let's move on to the spin-offs! Once again, like for Generation 1, there was a game released for the Nintendo 64 that would allow you to battle using your Generation 2 Pokemon on the big screen, and I actually went through and made a team to use in Stadium 2 this time around. There's all sorts of tournaments you can enter, and a new handful of minigames as well, which are once again probably going to steal the show for you if you don't have the transfer pack or friends to play with. Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, which I mentioned briefly the last time I talked about Pokemon, also released in this generation. Yeah, I messed up last time when it came to knowing what generation this game belonged to. It's a sequel to the original Pokemon Puzzle League, only on the Game Boy. It's certainly Pokemon Puzzle League. In Japan only, there was a sequel to the original Pokemon trading card game video game called Pokemon Trading Card GV2. Only in Japan. I don't know why. It's not like nobody plays the TCG over here in the States. It just never came out over here. And that's it. Yeah, only 3 spin-offs this time around. I genuinely have no idea what this could be attributed to. Maybe the fact that both the N64 and Game Boy Color were approaching the ends of their lives, or maybe the fact that Pokemania was dying down. But that's all they made. Overall, I've got to say that Generation 2 is kind of a nothing generation to me. For every single thing they did right, there's another issue, like something that they kept from Generation 1, or even entirely new problems like the pacing in the late game with the wild Pokemon. Game Freak has clearly gotten their footing here, like they know they can make a competent game. They just have to really put the work in next time, so hey, maybe the fuck yous were warranted this time, because overall, my biggest takeaway here? Well, these games are pretty much on par with Red and Blue. Gold and Silver finally released in Japan in